Hello guys. I am going to share with you guys an unexpected and life-turning event of my life. But before getting into the video, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. A more interesting real couple of stories. Meet me. This is David Jackson, currently based in Phoenix, and where I'm working as a teacher in an architecture university. Tracing back to year 2020 when I got married to 27-year-old woman named Sarah. I met her at the food store where she was selling her cupcakes. That was the time when she was wearing a mask because of the pandemic, but I could see her attractive eyes. I fell in love with her at first sight. So I proposed to her after having a relationship of about 2 months, 2 weeks. We got married when I came to know that Sarah was carrying my baby in her womb. Life was going perfectly. All right at the beginning, saying we were blessed with a baby girl named Emma. My relationship with my wife was really so satisfying. We used to have a lot of fun and romance. Our physical relationship was really perfect. She used to entertain me a lot in the bed by viewing alluring Ling. Everything was smooth and good. And I'm a baby girl turned 1-year-old. My wife decided to admit our daughter to the daycare and intended to start the job again as a baker. I did not agree with her idea, as I wanted her to manage all the home chores. I asked her to start up an online bakery, but she refused and made it crystal clear to me that she would only do the job at the cafe recommended by her friend. Well, the very next day I woke up, my wife was already prepared. Well, as if she was going somewhere outside, I knew that she was going to the cafe for the job, as she was holding some baking tools after getting ready for my workplace. I also dropped my wife to the cafe. I remember her friend was already standing outside at the cafe as if she was desperately waiting for my wife. She seemed really excited. As soon as my wife moved to the cafe, her friend literally hugged her tightly and then started whispering. My wife seemed really confused and wondered. I did not notice anything further and went to my workplace. Everything was definitely good, but things started getting wrong one day. Something really awkward and perplexing happened. I remember it was my wife's birthday. I was extremely happy for her birthday. So I arranged a party for her where I invited just our close friends. My wife's attitude was really so disappointing at her birthday party. She was taking no interest in the party. Her facial expressions made it clear to me that my wife was getting bored of the party, which I had arranged for her. Even when I introduced my close coworkers to my wife, she did not even greet them properly. I had never found her being so rude. It seemed like she was not happy with the birthday party which I had arranged for her. I remember when the party got over, my wife literally panicked a lot and quarreled with me. She said that she was expecting me to arrange a wonderful birthday party for her because, according to her, I just arranged an ordinary birthday party. I had never thought that my life could be so materialistic. I was really restless and disappointing that night because for the very first time I had seen my wife. I did not want to ruin her mood further. So I cuddled her tightly in order to fix her mood. But at this sight was really thoughtful that when I got my eyes opened in order to quench my thirst, I was literally shocked to see my wife chatting on the phone. It was about 3. I had never seen her before like this, being occupied in the mobile phone. At the dark hour of the night, my wife's activities were literally getting strange day by day once it was a Valentine's Day. When I woke up in the morning, my wife was wearing a mask on her face. She was doing manicure and pedicures. I remember my wife seemed really excited. Like if she was going somewhere that day. My wife wore a crimson-colored dress. She was indeed looking really adorable. I remember her phone was continuously ringing. My wife did not even prepare breakfast for me that day because, according to her, she had to go to the cafe early that day. Well, when I asked her to drop her off, she refused and said that a friend would come to receive her. I hugged her and went to my workplace. I was just on the way of my workplace while I caught a sight of my wife alone with her friend. I remember they both were in luxurious and fancy cars. I literally got shocked at that time because her friend obviously could not own such an expensive car. I literally did not take anything to my nurse and went to the market to buy red roses and chocolates for my bike. As she was my only Valentine, I actually wanted to give her a surprise by suddenly going to her cafe with red roses and chocolates. I remember I even took half leave from my workplace that day. But when I went to my wife's cafe, I saw something that was really unbelievable. I remember it was about 4 p.m. in the evening, when I went to my wife's cafe. When I went into the cafe, I found my wife nowhere in the cafe. Even though I asked the receptionist many times about my vibe. But the receptionist told me that my wife took half leave by today and was not in the cafe. Right at that moment, I called my wife so many times, but she did not respond to me. I was really worried about her because I kept calling her. But she did not respond even it was about 3 a.m. of the night. But my wife did not reach the house even yet. At that time, my Valentine Day really ruined that day. I had not even any contact with my wife that whole day. My wife literally reached the house that night at about 4 a.m. Remember, she was fully drunk that time. There was literally no place for my angriness. I yelled at her loudly and asked her why she was outside the whole day. I remember that night, my wife was so drunk that she was not able to answer me properly. As soon as she entered the house, she just hit the sack. Well, I took patience and decided to discuss this matter with my wife by tomorrow. But when I discussed this matter with my wife, she said that she was celebrating Valentine's Day with her friends. I literally called my wife lesbian that day because she did not even consider it and went to her cafe. My wife's activities were getting more and more strange day by day. One day, something really ridiculous happened. It was about 1 a.m. that night when I opened my eyes. My wife was nowhere in the bed. I did not consider it and slept again. After about 2 hours, when I again got my eyes opened, my wife was still not in the bed. I got worried about her. I looked at my wife here and there and finally realized that she was in the washroom because I could hear her voice coming from the washroom. I knocked on the door but no one opened. My wife opened the door. After about 10 minutes, my wife's shirt button was open and she was sweating badly. She began to give me an explanation that she was playing a game while doing the washroom. I did not notice and asked her to sleep with me. Things were getting complicated day by day. My physical relationship with my wife was really unsatisfactory. Like before, we used to have physical fun multiple times in a day. But now my wife stopped finding any physical interest in me the way she was ignoring me and used to be full. Almost every time was a red flag for me. I even noticed that my wife was also used to ignore our daughter as well. I never intended to chase her. But when one day I heard my wife's sexting conversation with someone on the phone, I decided to chase her in order to know the actual matter. The next morning when I woke up, my wife was preparing herself in front of the mirror. As usual, my wife became so irresponsible that she had not even prepared breakfast for me. Those days. Even she had not offered me dinner. I decided to chase her because last night I had secretly heard her conversation, a phone call where my wife was planning to date someone. My facial expressions were just normal as I did not want my wife to suspect me by any means. As soon as my wife left the house by saying that she was going for a sleepover with her pregnant friend, I decided to follow her. I kept chasing her and finally they both reached a couple hotel. I literally got shocked. Her friend dropped her to the hotel and then left. My wife was continuously calling someone as if she was waiting for someone to receive her. After about 10 minutes, a mature handsome man came to receive my wife. I was extremely furious after seeing this all, but I tolerated and kept following them. Finally, they both entered a room which they looked. I tried my best to see what was happening besides inside the room, but the door was locked. I heard some inappropriate sounds coming from the room. It was crystal clear that they both were on the bed and were enjoying physically. I knocked on the door harshly. And finally my wife opened the door. She was literally like a fish out of water. After finding me in front of her, I remember my wife was sweating badly. That time, I literally got shocked to see her almost naked. Well, literally there was no place for my patience at that time. Because when I entered the room by pushing my wife partially, my wife's affair partner was fully naked on the bed. I slapped my wife and then made her crystal clear to stay away from me. She was begging badly and was trying to sort out the matter. She lied a lot to make me trust her again. But I decided to have separation because I did not want to live with such a receiver anymore. Even though I reached the house, my eyes were filled with tears. My wife's disloyalty was continuously popping up in my mind. I was highly upset at that time. I had never thought that my wife could do this to me. She was indeed a liar. When I went to the daycare in order to take my daughter, I came to know that my wife had already taken my daughter. I became even so angry at that time. My wife reached the house at about 12 a.m. of the night along with our daughter. She was apologizing me, but I did not consider it. I literally kicked her out of my house. I decided to take revenge from my wife because the way she cheated on me was not worth forgiveness. The very next day I called my wife's friend to our house. I remember my wife was really greedy and a gold digger. So I gave her some expensive things to trap her. Soon, I succeeded in trapping her. And finally, she told me that my wife actually used to date her ex who left her a few years back after having a relationship of 4 years. My wife's friend further told me that my wife just got married to me in order to make her jealous. But when she came to know that he wanted to reconcile, my wife became crazy and she agreed to patch up with him. After listening to all of this, I was literally burning with revenge. I physically attracted my wife's friend and we both then shared the bed. I literally did this all in order to take revenge from my wife. My wife's friend became really addicted to me. But one day I shared my intentions with her and she was okay with that. One day when it was my birthday, my wife was continuously calling me, but I did not respond to her. My wife's friend finally exposed that I was dating her and we both were physically active. When my wife came to know that I started dating her own friend, there was no place for my wife's anger. She became so jealous that she started sending me her friend's pictures with her ex-boyfriend and started telling me that her friend was a slut, blah, blah. I literally blocked her. At the moment, after about 2 months when I was sleeping peacefully, my phone began to ring. It was a message from my wife who said that she wanted to live with me again and wanted to reconcile. The next morning when I woke up, she was outside of my house and started begging me for reconciliation. To be honest, I was so confused and upset because I was not able to make a decision properly. Meanwhile, my wife's friend came and showed me a video that was really disappointing. In that video, my wife was planning with her ex to attain my property by trapping me again. After watching the video, I became even more disappointed. At the same night, my wife's friend showed me the report that she was carrying my baby in her womb. At first I did not trust her. But then the reports made me clear that she was carrying my baby. My wife's friend further exposed that the daughter my wife used to claim mine actually belonged to her ex. After listening to her, became even more angry. I invited my wife the very next morning by saying that I wanted to reconcile. But the next day when she came, I slapped her and told her everything. I showed her 2 medical reports. One that made me glad that her daughter was not actually mine. And the other report that stated that my wife's friend was pregnant. I divorced her at the moment. Now, living peacefully. What would you do if you were in the same situation?